All right, everybody, I'm calling this one the comeback story. I'm so excited because today we're going to be talking a little bit of nonprofits and how you can implement nonprofits into your digital business. But I just love our guest today because his story is so crazy. Like, you ever hear just one of those stories, just like, how did that even happen? Well, that's going to be today's episode with Mr. Blake Nathan. We're going to be diving into his story and his come up and how he really dove into the nonprofit world and ultimately has become the king of nonprofits. Now you're like, Michael, I don't need to learn about nonprofits. This isn't relevant to me. Yes, it is. If you own a business, there is a ton of benefits to owning a nonprofit and having that as a tax strategy. Just don't tell anybody I said that. But it's going to be a really fun conversation that we have with Blake today. So welcome to the $1 Million Secrets podcast. Today is going to be really helpful for you, especially if you are looking for some creative ways to liquidate some of your tax spend that you may have been paying in the past. So it's going to be really fun. But just a reminder, we do these shows every single week, and the whole intention is to help you grow in your online business. So today I say we just jump right on into it, and let's welcome in Mr. Blake Nathan. Blake, how's it going, man? You doing all right?
I'm doing good, man. It's an honor, a privilege to be here today, man, with you. So I'm super blessed and I'm super excited to get into the conversation, man.
Man, I am pumped up and excited. So just a little bit of backstory. Blake and I have known each other for a couple years now. I've kind of helped him run some of his marketing, but then also in the past, I've, kind of been in the background seeing him, speaking on other people's platforms, podcasts. And this dude just knows so much. He just knows so much whenever it comes to nonprofits, grant funding, things of that nature. So today, what we want to do, Blake, is I want them just open up, share your story, because, dude, you come from a place and you have such a powerful story that I think if people hear it, they'll be like, dang, that's crazy. So I want you to share their story, how you got into nonprofits, and let's give them some game. We'll eventually get into some strategies they can use in their online business.
Yeah, man. So Blake Nathan, everybody calls me Lily the nonprofit guy, man. I love teaching folks about the nonprofit space, from launching your nonprofit, scaling it. And I always talk about it. The most important part of the puzzle is sustainability. And so my story, how I really got into the nonprofit space, man, is literally, I was a classroom teacher. And people do not know that, like a decade ago, I was literally in the classroom working with young people, working with kiddos, teaching them about technology education. But as I was teaching in the classroom, I had young people coming to me every single day, and I had this rapport with my kids. Like, I was a big brother, I was an uncle, I was a cousin, I was a father figure in a lot of these young people's lives. But they said, hey, Mr. Nathan, like, some of my students were like, you're the first ever Black male teacher that I had in my entire educational career. And these are 7th and 8th graders. I'm like, man, there could have been a possibility that you went a full 12 years without having a Black male teacher. And so that struck me in my heart. I was like, man, like, this is crazy, because I didn't have that experience. I grew up I went to an all Black school. I had Black teachers. I went to HBCU, Historically Black College University. I had Black professors. So moving from Atlanta, Georgia to then Indianapolis, Indiana, I didn't have that type of sense. Like, I didn't know this was a problem. I didn't know this even existed. And I'm like, man, young people do not have the opportunity to see a positive role model inside the classroom that look like them if they're a student of color. So I was like, I can continue to work with these kiddos every single day, or try to shift the paradigm in education. And so my nonprofit was birthed in that moment. In 2014, I said, you know what? I'm going to create a nonprofit that diversifies the teacher workforce, increase the enrollment or the teacher pipeline to make sure we have more equal representation of Black and brown teachers in our classroom. And that was my mission. That was my vision. And that was really my ultimate goal, is like, I'm going to be a nonprofit executive. I'm going to be a CEO. And so my story, Mike, is like, literally, I was in the classroom, had this aha moment, like, I can create a solution to a national problem, because Black men don't represent 2% of our teacher workforce. So even to this day, the number is still in single digits. And so we have a lot of work to do. And so started my nonprofit, and then, like, literally the rest is history, man.
I love it, man. But there was a story that I really want you to tell that drives your why
Ooh.
behind why you do everything. And I love
Oh,
your
man.
mission, man. I love your heart to serve. And I don't want to discount that. But I think there's a
No.
story when you had a moment in your life where, you had to kind of evaluate your life. And maybe I'm not saying
Mhm.
that in the right way, but I've heard your
Nah,
story
yeah.
many times when you found yourself in a very unpredictable,
Mhm.
circumstance. So I want you
Yeah.
to kind of share that story in your life to the audience, and then
Oh, yeah.
share with the audience what that moment in your life did for you. Because we all have these pivotal moments in life where things just change, right? Where things
Mhm.
just like whether it's a perspective change, whether it's a literal physical change. Like, but we all have these moments, and I call them pivotal moments because you can look back in the past and say, oh, that changed me forever. And you have one of those moments. I think you know what I'm alluding to.
Yeah,
So I'll let
I
you
do.
share that story and share, what that moment did for your future and how that affects even you today.
Yeah, so I skipped over some years, Mike, when I was in the classroom teacher, because the story Mike is talking about right now, I'm about to share with you all right now that's listening in, so or watching. In college, I went to university, and I was very active on the college campus. Like I did the fraternity thing. I studied abroad, but I was really involved in student leadership, and so I was in some organizations, or we call them student government association. So around my senior year, actually going to my senior year, I was running for student government vice president, and I always tell this story all the time, y'all. Like on the college campus, to get people to vote, you got to have the best food plates. You got to promise your peers, clean dormitories, or making sure you have some fun events on the college campus. And so as you're politicking and campaigning, you are trying to gain the trust of your peers. And it was a young gentleman that I was running against. And I was a Kappa, he was an Alpha. So you had that battle there. We feel like we were both popular in our class as juniors, rising seniors. So a lot of people knew us since we've been on the college campus. And so it was like this battle. He did this concert on college campus, and everybody probably done another group, but I'm from Atlanta. So Rich Kids, Travis, I grew up in the Travis Porter, Roscoe Dash, Rich Kids era, and Rich Kids were one of the popular groups back then. And so he threw a concert on college campus for people to vote for him. I said, you know what? Hey man, if he's doing this college concert on the campus, it has to end around 8 or 9 o'clock. So people are gonna try to figure out, what do I do after the concert's over? I said, man, I'm gonna throw a party. I'm gonna throw this after party. So I threw an after party off campus because I didn't have any time restrictions for that. And I said, I'm gonna have people come from the concert, come to the party, have a great time. Everybody's like, man, Blake threw this crazy after party, because now they don't even think about the concert anymore. They're thinking about voting for your boy, right? And so as I was walking to the venue, I got there a little bit early. And back then, when I was in college, you had to have a college ID to get inside the club venue. And of course, because anytime you do a college party, the local establishments didn't want locals in the party migrating with college students if you were a local individual and not attending the university. So I was walking up to the venue. I see some commotion going on with the security guard and a gentleman. He was literally telling the guy, like, hey, you can't get into this club. You don't have a college ID. That means you don't attend this university. He was so agitated and irritated and upset that he made a comment to him, like, man, I'll come shoot this club up. I'm like, man, I ain't paying it no mind. I'm trying to walk in, Mike. Like, I'm trying to get into the club, enjoy myself, politic with the people. I was literally in the club for 10 minutes, and I heard this loud bang noise. I was standing in front of one of my friends at the time, just communicating with him about, who should I go talk to? What shall I do? And he heard a loud bang. I put my hands on my chest, and literally my hands were blood red. And I was like, oh my gosh. He said, Blake, you just got shot. I said, what? It happened so fast, y'all. The adrenaline rush was hitting me. I remember like a movie. They threw me in a cab, rushed me to Vanderbilt Hospital, and only thing I remember them saying is like, "Hey, who do you want us to call?" I said, "Call my mom." My mom was in Atlanta, Georgia. She rode up like 4 hours overnight. The first one I saw when I opened my eyes was my mother standing over top of me. And in that moment, everybody was like, man, Blake, you're so lucky. You're so lucky. I said, no, I'm blessed. Like, God has a purpose in my life. And I don't know what it is in this moment, but I'm going to figure it out. Fast forward a year later, I graduated and I pursued a career in education. And that's how, for me, I wanted to become a teacher. But when I was reflecting my teaching practice and reflecting back on what I was doing, even on the college campus, like, man, I know I got a bigger purpose than being in the classroom. What is this, God? Like, what should I be doing? And I said, I was referring back to when I got shot and why that young man was so upset. And where was the person trying to teach him about de-escalation strategies, or how to self-regulate, or how to have conflict resolution, or ensure that, hey, before I make this permanent decision, don't have a temporary reaction. And I said, maybe you have a father figure, maybe you have a big brother. I didn't know this guy from Adam. I'm just trying to come up with all these assumptions. But my biggest assumption was, maybe he didn't have a positive male role model in the classroom in the form of an educator that was molding and shaping and pouring into this young man, that now when he's making this decision, he's doing a life altering choice and making a life altering decision, literally trying to want to take somebody else's life. And that's where my nonprofit was also a birth, Mike. It was like, literally, I had this purpose of a bigger calling. I literally was in those four walls every single day teaching my kiddos. I'm like, I have a bigger impact in this classroom. And I believe that's through this nonprofit space. And I always share this, I always tell people this, Mike. People start nonprofits for three reasons. The first reason, let's be honest, they want to save money on taxes. Like they want to figure out ways to decrease their tax bill where they don't have to pay Uncle Sam. Number two, they have a life experience. Either something like my situation where it's literally life altering and you reevaluate your entire life and evaluate why you are here on this earth. And I never shared the story, Mike, with you, the way that it was so traumatic for me, because the week that I got shot on April 6, 2010, and the week later when I was back at home on bed rest, my next door neighbor was driving a Corvette 1 year younger than me, and he died in a car crash. And I was questioning God, like, what do you have from, why did you decide to take this person's life? Because we understand God doesn't make any mistakes. And I'm like, why did you decide to take this person's life, but save mine? I got shot, but he died in a car crash. And so fast forward when I graduated from college and I pursued a career in education, I'm like, I'm still going through this life of like figuring out what do I need to do? What's my calling? Because I also believe that I have a purpose to fulfill while I'm still on this earth. God didn't just leave me here for no reason. And so that's why I started my nonprofit, because I believe you have some type of life experience that alters the way you think, and you believe you see your story in some other people, and you're now being that beacon of hope for them and the voice for them.
Love it, man. Love it. That's like your setback was what you needed for, all this to happen. All this to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Blake, is going, he's helping tons of people start nonprofits. He's taken this education around. He just spoke at a conference I was at in Atlanta. This dude is like everywhere. He's everywhere. But if that didn't happen, like those little pivotal moments, he probably wouldn't be here where he's at today, educating the masses on this strategy and about nonprofits. And so, but it was all born out of, a time in his life where it was kind of messy, very
Mm-hmm.
messy. And so I love this, man. So I want to kind of talk about, after your story, right? I want to talk about that. After that point in your life, you decided to do this nonprofit stuff. You know, you've been able to, grow your nonprofits. You've had some hiccups from what I've heard, hiccup here, hiccup there, but you've actually
Mm-hmm.
been able to do very well and get a lot of grant funding for your nonprofits. But one of the things that, a lot of people listening in right now, they're like, how does this apply to me? Right. So I'm a course creator. I'm a consultant. I'm a speaker, an author, right? How does nonprofits even apply to my life? So if you were here to give advice and like maybe somebody like me was sitting here saying, Blake, this is cool. You have a nonprofit, but how could I do that for me in the digital space? Where would you tell them to start? And what would
Mm-hmm.
that look like for somebody like that?
Yeah, and I would say this: if you're a coach, a consultant, a course creator, and you're in this digital e-commerce space, I will always say this: when you're creating your nonprofit, because I always advise for-profit business owners, entrepreneurs, when you create that LLC, the second thing that you should want to create too as well is a nonprofit organization. Like you are preparing yourself for the blessings. I always say preparing yourself for a championship. Championships are not won in the final game; they're won in preseason, in the practices. Like so, as entrepreneurs, we have to understand that there's going to be a day that the financial blessings come pouring down in our lives and then pouring down in our businesses. So I always say when you create that LLC, the next thing you need to also think about creating is that nonprofit. Now, why would this be so important? What that will even look like in the digital space? I'm gonna give you a promise. Can I give Mike? I'm gonna give them some game for a second in this nonprofit space, y'all.
Let's do it. Let's give out all the value, man. You got
Think
the
about
floor.
it. Think about this, y'all. I'm a coach or a consultant. You have a fee for service model that's baked inside your business model. You charge people to educate them, to receive coaching, one-on-one group setting, digital products. You're selling those products. But let's say you had a nonprofit organization as well. Now think about it. You probably saying, you know what? There's some people out there that can't afford my rates. There's some people out there that can't afford my products. But I don't want to just give these things away, right? I don't want to just offer these things for free, because guess what? That cuts into your bottom line. Now you're like, man, I'm losing money. But if I had a nonprofit organization, I can provide scholarships, I can provide vouchers, I can provide discounts, and I can have the nonprofit literally be the organization that provides those vouchers, those scholarships, or even those discounted rates. A lot of entrepreneurs do a lot of free events. You should be doing those free events under your nonprofit organization, because we call that corporate responsibility. We call that an opportunity to really have your organization, your for-profit company, ensure that we're making this impact in the community. And guess what? When we're making an impact in the community, we're going to get that money back tenfold. So you may say, "Well, I'm losing money in the immediate, but I have a bigger thing that I'm looking for down the line through my nonprofit organization." So now, Mike, we donate, we got scholarships coming in. That's a tax write-off play right there, y'all. So I hope you got your pen and paper ready, because I know I'm gonna give you some information on this interview, but you want to make sure that you are documenting the process. So I'm literally going to donate some money to my nonprofit probably quarterly for a tax write-off, but I'm also going to donate in-kind services. That's what we call it. We call in the nonprofit space. You can donate your services, and your services have a value, and that value, 10,000, 5,000. You got products, etc. Now you're going to donate that to your nonprofit as well, and that's also a tax write-off. So I always tell entrepreneurs, like, we're not creating nonprofits that conflict with our everyday activity as business owners. We're creating nonprofits that complement everything that we're doing every single day. So if you're doing workshops, you're doing masterminds, you're doing classes, you got products, actually donate some of those things to your nonprofit and offer free a few your people that can't afford it, because there are people that can't afford it, but they will be excellent executors, because they're hungry for the information, but they're literally financially, they don't have the financial means to even take advantage of something that you're offering. So you got that tug at your
And
heart.
Blake, real quick, I want to say, because I actually reached out to Blake about this recently, because we had somebody come to one of our events where we were selling one of our courses or programs, and our
Mm-hmm.
courses and programs are usually a few $1,000s. And so this one lady hit us up and she's like, I have a nonprofit. She was like, would you donate this to me? Because I can't afford it, but we have a nonprofit. Would you donate? And I called up Blake and I was like, dude, should I do this? He was like, yeah, it can be a tax write-off. He's like, this is why you need a nonprofit. And he was like, you need to have that set up for yourself. And so I just want to say it's really cool because Blake kind of consulted us. Now, Blake, I know, is not a tax, a
Yeah.
person. He's not an accountant, right? He can't give out legal and tax advice, right? But I want to make sure I say that for you. But what I'll say is really cool because like Blake opened my eyes to the same thing recently. He was like, bro, you have this course that you're selling for $5,000, whatever that may be, $10,000. You could donate, and that's a tax write off, right? So, which was really cool for me. I was like, what if I created a nonprofit and we found a way to do this, more, and so I just want to say I thank you for the advice, and I think this is gonna start clicking with people when they hear this, like, oh, I
Yeah.
can do this. I can do this with a course, a curriculum, and things of that nature.
Yeah. And I mean, we do a lot of free stuff, like free master classes, free webinars. You're going to give free products out. Like somebody's probably hitting the DM right now. Like, do you have an ebook? And it's like, yo, you can donate that to your nonprofit. Like, donate a certain amount of your products to your nonprofit and have the nonprofit give it out. And also, that's again another play for you to like collect even more data, because now people can apply for your scholarships. Like, let's say I had a coaching program right now and I'm like, man, I don't want to give out the $5,000 right now to my for-profit business. I'm going to donate that scholarship, that actual course or that actual coaching program to my nonprofit. And let's just say the program is 5,000. You give away 10 scholarships. That's 50K that you donated. Are you losing money from your business? No. Right? You donating that to the nonprofit, but guess what's going to happen? I'm giving a play, Mike. You're going to have an influx of people that apply for that scholarship that want to be a part of your program. That's more data that you can now have to your listserv, your email list. And now, guess what? Eventually, you can use that to repitch them for another program that you have or a lower tier. So I always say this: you have your for-profit, your nonprofit. These organizations, these companies are working hand in hand together. Don't look at it as a separate thing where it's so much draining and it's literally burning to you. And we call it being burnt out because you feel like it's going to be a bigger responsibility to manage the nonprofit and for-profit. Look at it as like your philanthropic endeavors where you want to donate something to, you want to do some corporate giving. And also, Mike, people don't know this. Now we can also get grants and sponsors and donors to help offset the cost as well. So now, guess what? The scholarship that you want to offer, we can go raise that money from a philanthropic side, a grant or a donor or a funder, and still pay our for-profit company. So there's two ways you can look at it. I can donate some scholarships personally at my own business to my nonprofit. I also can go raise some money, right, to actually offer scholarships. And so those are the two plays that I would run right now if I was in the digital space, in the coaching and consulting world, and leveraging my nonprofit from the donating money to also going out there and raising OPM, other people's money as well.
Yeah, I love it, man. And so I think a lot of people, they think of, whenever it comes to starting a nonprofit, hey, I don't have time for another organization. I got my one business. I got to create another one. Like, that seems like a lot of work. So, from somebody just starting out, like, okay, let's say me, I want to create a nonprofit, and give away, curriculum, grants, scholarships, things like that. What is like a time, like, or, if somebody's wanting to do this just maybe as a minimal tax play, I'm just making that up, right?
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
what
yeah.
would be like a time commitment? Is this something that would drain them of their time? I guess is my question for you. Like, what's maybe I know you're the guru at nonprofits, so maybe you have some systems or some way you would set it
Yeah.
up from the beginning to minimize that.
Yeah, I always say this too. Like the riches is in the niches in the nonprofit space. A lot of us want to have this massive impact. I talk to a lot of founders of like, I want to do housing, education, literacy, workshops, people to do trauma informed care. It's like they're all over the place. And I always say this, Mike, you cannot boil the ocean. The majority of the world right now is filled with water. And the thing that is less is land. So there's no possible way that somebody can literally go out there and try to boil the ocean. That's what I say when you're spreading yourself too thin. So if I was just starting my nonprofit right now and I'm already super overwhelmed and got a lot of stuff on my plate in the for-profit side, I'm doing coaching classes, I'm selling products, I'm marketing, I'm recording content. It's a lot. So you're like, how do I even squeeze in doing something else and adding something else to my plate? I'm gonna tell you what you need first off. You need to have some systems in place. I can be honest with you. I probably run my nonprofit less than, and I'm talking about my 7-figure nonprofit, less than. Mike knows this. Sometimes when we be on calls, I got my daughter with me. I'm taking my kids to school. I'm picking my kids up from school. So my schedule is kind of crazy. There's no way that I really have the time and energy and effort to run this nonprofit 40 hours a week, right? So I always say you have to have systems, you have to have SOPs, standard operating procedures. You have to incorporate automations. People are applying to my programs in my nonprofit right now, and they're getting emails, they're getting text messages, and I'm not on the computer. I'm talking with Mike right now about my nonprofit, but I'm not really running my nonprofit. So my entrepreneurs that I want to be in the nonprofit space, you play at the level that you want to play it at. Like you can say, you know what, I just want to donate to my nonprofit for tax purposes every quarter. That's cool. And I want to do some giveaways. I want to do some give backs. That's perfectly fine. Just create one thing that you would like to offer, like one thing that you would like to provide. If that's a scholarship, let the intentionality and the focus be around that scholarship. And guess what you create? You create an application one time. You create the automation in the workflow one time. You create the website one time, and people constantly apply to that scholarship program, and you open it up every quarter for them to apply to, but you're not managing it every single day. You're not responding to people's emails. You literally are creating the automations and the systems that you can use. And one of my favorite systems I always use, y'all, I hope you're writing this down, is Monday.com. Like Monday.com is literally how I run my entire nonprofit. Automations, workflows, applications, data. It's a CRM and project management platform for a reason. So that's literally how I run my nonprofit, where I feel like, and again, I'm full-time CEO. Like that's what I do for so my entrepreneurs that don't want to be a full-time nonprofit CEO. You're talking about less than 5 hours a week, maybe, and I won't even say weekly. You know, something that you can do 2 to 3 hours a week, and you can still run your for-profit organization and company on your day-to-day. And so if I was first starting out, I would have systems. I would have a actual operating system, a CRM, a project management platform, Monday.com, y'all. I would have automations. I would have SOPs, and I'm good to go. And I will focus on one thing that you want to offer out the gate. Do not try to boil the ocean and do so much so fast. Just focus on one thing that you want to offer. So if it's scholarships, make it scholarships. If it's vouchers, make it vouchers. But just focus on one thing that you want to offer in your nonprofit.
Awesome. I love it, man. I love it. This is good info. I hope you guys are finding value in this. I know we've been going for a little bit, but it's really cool to hear Blake. You get going, and I'm like, dude, you could tell this guy knows his stuff, right? And you could always tell when there's somebody great in the room. So, one question I had, man, whenever it comes to nonprofits, is, you said maybe 2, 3 hours a week, 5 hours a week. You just start with one thing, though. As
Mhm.
far as like whenever it comes to board members, because feel like that's where a lot of people get scared too, is like building their team, because there's a lot. It's not like you just go throw up an LLC. Like, you have to
Mhm.
cherry pick the
Yeah.
right people for your board, and so like how complex is that? But I'm sure you have probably a better way to break it down super easy for us. So talk
Mhm.
about that from like a newbie's perspective. Like, how do you build a board? How much time commitment is spent there as well?
Yeah, I would say this too. You know, I have my starting five, and I'm gonna tell you my starting five. You know, I love using sports analogies, y'all. But I have my starting five, which is my board personas or my board, like the board profiles that I'm looking for. And I say profiles, I mean the individuals that will serve on my board. Now, a lot of people think that finding your board is hard or the amount of people you need to have on your board is a lot. Y'all, I'm gonna break it down to you. Every state across the United States, doesn't matter if it's Cali, Georgia, New York, Texas, Florida. We do nonprofits across the US. Every state requires at least 3 board members. And guess what, y'all? You can be one of the 3 board members. So most of y'all think like I gotta go get 5 people or 7 people or who do I have on my board? Y'all, let's simplify. You only need 3, and you can be one of the 3. So that means you only need to find 2 more people. Now, I always say it's levels to it. You have your inaugural board. Your inaugural board is the people that will be on the initial paperwork to get your exemption status on the state level to the federal level. That you're gonna have 3 people, and that 3 people can be you can have a family member, your wife, your child, your cousin. But I always say this too: you don't want to have 100%. So if you on the board and you have a relative on the board, that's 2 people. The third person needs to be someone that's not related to you. So guess what? It can be someone you went to college with, you worked with, a university professor, someone that you hang out and it's in your network, a fraternity member, sorority member. You can find one other person. And I always say the people that you find on your board are people that are going to add value to the nonprofit, but also people that believe and trust you. And that's like the biggest thing that you want to find for your board members. And the commitment, Mike, people don't realize these are not on your leadership team. This is your governing body. So your governing body is your board of directors, and you only meet with your board maybe 4 times a year. The minimum is 4 times a year. That's one a quarter, and you're meeting for an hour to 2 hours. So you're asking your board members to potentially commit to 8 hours out of the full year to just support the organization from a board perspective. So that's 4 times a year. Now you can do monthly, you can do bi-monthly, or you can do quarterly. It's totally up to you. Also, my top five, like I talked about earlier, my top five is someone in legal that can provide you legal counsel. Does it have to be a lawyer, Blake? No, and it doesn't, right? I always say, but you want someone to look over your MOUs, your contracts, your vendor agreements, because again, some of this stuff, this language in these documents is like, it's even over my head. So I'm like, I need to consult with an expert, legal counsel. My second player, someone in accounting that, hey, you know what? The financials, the budgets, the ER, the AP, accounts payable, accounts receivable. I need someone to manage that. CEO, you don't need to be managing all this stuff all the time. So you need someone that can provide that legal advice. I mean, that accounting advice. Someone that's in politics, but not a politician. Y'all, there's a lot of legislation moves around. There's a lot of different bills being passed, but you don't want a politician because you can lose your tax exemption status that way. And then the fourth person, someone that's involved in the community, someone that's business savvy, because again, the nonprofit is a business. We don't realize that it's not just an organization. When you go register the nonprofit on the state level, you're registering as a business. And so you need someone that understands business and can provide you business advice. And the fifth person, Mike, is someone that is in your industry, in your niche as much as you are, that understands what you're trying to do and what that looks like, and is an expert to the level that you're kind of at. So the other four are like, they supporting you. They're gonna rock with you. They believe in the vision and they want to see you win, but they're not gonna be like, I know exactly what you're trying to do with this nonprofit. I just want to support Mike. And so my starting five: someone in accounting, someone in legal, someone in politics or legislation, but not a politician. Someone in the community, and my fifth starting five person is someone in your niche. So you got that. 3 members, find 2 other people, and again, meet 4 times a year.
I love it, man. That's a play right there, y'all. I hope you took notes
Yeah.
on that. So I want to kind of ask you because I feel like you have this down packed, but you've probably seen a lot of mistakes that people have made whenever it comes to nonprofits, right? So for business
Mhm.
owners specifically, what mistakes have you seen business owners bump into or create for themselves whenever they started to create a nonprofit, right? So they say, hey, this is a good idea, Blake. I'm gonna actually go run this play myself. But then
Mhm.
they go do this thing or that thing wrong. Like, what are some of the biggest, I've already said this, but mistakes that you've seen
Yeah.
people hit that we should avoid and that you would give us advice on?
I'll say the first one I see all the time, and there's nothing wrong with the action. It's on the back end. Like I see a lot of entrepreneurs when they want to do these give backs and go out in the community and like fill up people's gas tank, do the toy drives, do the turkey things. Like it's like you're doing that under yourself as the for-profit business and not the nonprofit. Again, you need to be donating what you're going to spend anyway to the nonprofit so you can get the tax write-off. Like we can do purpose and profit, right? I always talk about it all the time. You want to make sure that you are donating that money to the nonprofit to get that tax deduction and then doing the philanthropic work. That's the first mistake I see a lot of people make. And the second one that people don't want to realize is that you can lose your tax exempt status. And y'all, I lost mine twice. Like over my 10-year span or 11 years now, I lost my tax exemption twice. The first time was I didn't file my taxes. The second time I filed my taxes incorrectly. And so a lot of people that lose their tax exemption status, especially, being a for-profit entity, like, okay, it's a little bit different in the nonprofit space. You don't file your taxes, you don't do it on time. Also, you're not tracking your expenses on the nonprofit, and you're co-mingling your money from your nonprofit, your for-profit. And those are kind of the biggest mistakes. So I always say, like, you want to separate, because these are two separate businesses. They have two separate EINs. So you want to make sure you have a QuickBooks for your for-profit and your QuickBooks for your nonprofit. And you make sure that you do your 990. This is what they call in the nonprofit space, Mike. Do your 990 tax return every single year. I don't care if you only have $10,000 or $10 million. You want to make sure that you actually do your 990 tax returns to stay compliant with the IRS and actually ensure that you keep your exemption status and you don't get it auto revoke. And the IRS will literally auto revoke your nonprofit status if you do not complete your tax returns. And so that's kind of the biggest place I see. And also, like I said, you're not donating the money to your nonprofit to get the write-off and then doing the actual community impactful work. You're actually just doing that under your for-profit company. And most times, because people don't have nonprofits as business owners, I'm
Right.
like, create your nonprofit and then do that give back.
So those people that are going and doing give backs and stuff under their name, it's not deductible,
Yeah,
right?
it's just it's not deductible. It's great. It's good for the community. It's admirable, but it's like, let's kill two birds with one stone. Let's donate the money to a nonprofit. Have the nonprofit do this philanthropic endeavors or philanthropic work that you want to do, and you get a tax write-off. So now you're doing both things, versus doing it individually on the for-profit. That's his corporate responsibility, right? But
That makes
you're
sense.
not winning with Uncle Sam.
Gotcha. And I mean, that's a good point. Definitely want to set yourself up. As you
Yeah.
were talking here, I was thinking about some of the biggest companies that how they use nonprofits, right?
Mm.
So I was thinking about, wasn't that like, and this is totally off the rails here, so I apologize. Isn't the NFL, were they or aren't they like a nonprofit, or they were at one point?
They were. So I think it was 2015 or 2017 they stopped being a tax exempt nonprofit. Now, when Mike's saying the NFL, like, it's the NFL headquarters. And so the teams, the franchises, they are for-profit entities. Now, there is one NFL team that is a not-for-profit, but they're not a tax exempt nonprofit, is the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay
Oh,
Packers
really?
is owned, yeah. So the Green Bay Packers is owned by members of the community. They cannot, so they don't have any investors or anything. Like, they're not a for-profit franchise. They are a not-for-profit organization. The same way Navy Federal is a not-for-profit. They have members.
I've
But
heard you say, and I've heard you say before, nonprofit does not mean you can't profit with nonprofits. Does that make sense?
exactly.
So go
Exactly.
into
Yeah.
that a little bit, because I think a lot of people just think nonprofits, charity work, and you kind of hit this at the beginning, but I want to make sure we
Hmm.
go into it again and like maybe a little deeper. But
Yeah.
so it's not
I would
just charitable, it's not just donations, right? You can
is
you can offer products, you can offer services with a not for profit, right?
exactly. And again, people, it's when we say not for profit, like, you're not the owners, the creators, the leadership is not trying to make a profit from the business. When you have a for profit, the goal is to make profits, but the goal is to make a lot of money, right? You want to be profitable. Non-for-profit is the same thing. You want to be profitable because it's the only way that you can continue to do the work that you want to do in the community.
Right.
Also, but you have, again, a prime example, Mike, I ran into a young lady at the grocery store the other day, and she was working with 501c6s, which are associations and organizational, like, membership-based nonprofits.
Hmm.
And think about it, our judges, our lawyers, they're different organizations that people pay membership dues to be a part of. And so those are not for profits as well. They're tax exempt organizations. So I always say that's like, but they have to be profitable. So do conferences, to do events, to do galas, to do golf tournaments, to do programs, you have to be profitable to do those things, because if there's no way that you can have money to do anything that you're trying to do to support your mission. So I always say, like, not for profit means that even if you're profitable, like if we have a $500,000 in our organization budget at the end of the year, so we have $500,000. That money doesn't go to the leaders of the organization. It doesn't go to the board to give them, bonuses. It's just reinvested back into the organization to scale and grow the nonprofit. So that's the biggest difference between for profit and nonprofit. As a for profit, you like, you know what, I'm gonna pay my investors more. I'm gonna pay the owners more. We're gonna pay our team more. And guess what? You can have, that's what you're doing for the profits. But the nonprofit, you're gonna take those profits and reinvest it back into your organization. That's kind of the biggest difference. And so you need to be profitable, or you're gonna have to dissolve the organization. And
Right.
then you don't even exist. So
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. Well, that's
yeah.
cool. Well, listen, y'all, this has been great combo so far. I know we could probably go in super deep and go into more about nonprofits and how you can use them, but I would really like for you to connect with Blake offline. He has so many good resources, events he's running with his for-profit and nonprofit businesses and organizations. So I'd love for you to connect. So Blake, where can people go to connect with you offline? I know there's tons of resources you have, so I'll let you pick where they can go, but we'd love for them to connect with you offline.
Yeah. So, man, you can always reach me out on social media. I am at the nonprofit guy. That's my social media across all platforms. Also, you can always go to nonprofit guide, the nonprofitguide.com. And so the nonprofit guide on IG, Instagram, Facebook, the nonprofit guy. My website, thenonprofitguide.com, to check me out. Also, you can always email me at info at the nonprofit guy. So if you have any questions about the nonprofit space, need a thought partner in the space, you can always tap in with me on social media, my website, or send me an email as well.
I love it, y'all. And he actually helps people form their nonprofits from scratch as well. So you can, connect him if you're thinking, man, this is something I need to get done. Reach out and tell him you came from this show and you came from the podcast, and I'm sure he'd be willing to hook you up. But Blake, man, thank you so much for coming on. I hope that the audience got a new insight on some ways they can use a nonprofit in their flywheel of business. So we appreciate you, man, for coming on and spending about 35-40 minutes with us here. But listen, y'all,
Yeah.
if you guys want to connect with Blake, go ahead and do so. But one thing I want to recommend you do is, once you tap in with somebody like Blake, like, actually do something, right? This is like actionable information you can go run with. Like, Blake took years learning this, like 10 years learning this information. Now he's giving it to you guys on a silver platter where you just take it. So actually go connect with Blake. That's cool, but actually do something with information. And so Blake,
Mm-hmm.
I know we've been talking about on my end, just getting a nonprofit up soon. So it's in the works. I'm excited. This year is going to be the year we finally get that done. And just so you all know, I don't think you got my audience knew, but I actually had a nonprofit back in like 2013, 2014.
Mm-hmm.
We dissolved it, but just because the timing wasn't right, as I went through college and things. But actually in high school, we created a nonprofit and it was cool. So I learned a lot there. And I wish I would have
Yeah.
had Blake in my life at that moment, because he would have helped save a lot of headache during that time. So it's really cool to see how things circling back around here. But and the reason why I'm saying this is this information that Blake is sharing is real. Like, I've been in the
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit space. I ran a nonprofit myself for 4 years. Like, I can tell you this dude knows his stuff. So go connect with him, but take action on this information. So Blake, thank you so much, man, again, for the final time, for being in here and just adding value to our audience.
Man, I appreciate the invite, man. It was a fun time, man. I appreciate it, bro.
100%. Well, you all listen, that is nonprofits. That's how you guys can use them in your business. I hope you all go and start your nonprofit and then come back to us and say, yo, I did it. That'd be phenomenal. I'd be like so stoked, so excited. But
Yes,
listen, we
sir.
do these shows every single week. These shows, the Million Dollar Secrets podcast, is just for you. So if you have somebody that you would like to learn from, or you have a topic that you would really, be fascinated in learning about, just leave a comment below, or DM me on Instagram. It's official Michael Tucker. And I would love to see who we can get in the rotation for you. I really want this podcast to be me sitting down, asking them the questions that you want asked, right? And because I've been in the marketing game for about 10 years now, maybe a little less than 10 years, but I have a lot of connections that you all can leverage. So let's work together. Let's use this community of podcast here to really just grow together. And just know, if you have a friend or a family member that is starting an online business and they want to learn how to grow their income online, their impact online, their influence online, send them this show. It's totally free. We're bringing on the best of the best in their industries to teach you guys on things that can help you grow. So again, thank you for being here. We appreciate you for tuning in on this episode with Mr. Blake Nathan, the nonprofit guy. We have more coming up, and you guys are going to be blown away by the guest. Go check out our past episodes. Go refer a friend to a future episode, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you guys for being here for the $1 Million Secrets podcast. See you in the next one.